Okay, welcome to the post Super Bowl 58 edition of the SumerSports Show. I'm Eric Eager. I'm one of the VPs at SumerSports. I'm joined by the CEO of SumerSports, Thomas Dimitroff. Thomas, the Kansas City Chiefs are back-to-back Super Bowl champions. Fun fact, the last time a team won back-to-back Super Bowls, their director of college scouting was the CEO of SumerSports, none other than Thomas Dimitroff. That is how long ago it has been since a team has repeated. Your thoughts on yesterday's game?
I'm all over the place. I mean, literally, I loved it. I thought it was a cool game to watch, and a lot of different levels, of course. I was up and down with my agitation. Some with San Fran, some with Kansas City, some with the actress. Sorry, not actress. Did I just say that? The musician, but I think she is an actress as well. And then all of the actresses and actors. I'm just like, wow, let's just focus on football. Anyway, I thought it was amazing. And then we're watching a rookie kicker, right? There's just a lot of stuff that we've talked about. And then we see Kelsey on the stage after being a madman like he's WWF. It's just all kinds. And on the sideline, kind of all the other stuff.
I got to be honest with you. And I'll say this to you because you're out right now. Yep. And, one day you'll probably be back in. So hopefully by then the Chiefs will have figured out a way to get back to the mean. But if you're in the NFL right now and you see this Chiefs team who can't line up straight against Buffalo, the Vegas Raiders don't complete a pass for 3 quarters on Christmas and they still beat you at home, right? Kelsey's beating up Andy Reid on the sideline during the Super Bowl. The whole attention all year is on she was in Valentine's Day. The actress and singer-songwriter Taylor Swift. The whole thing. Marquez Valdez-Scantling drops a point-blank touchdown against the Eagles. Everything's going wrong for this team. And it's not that they had a cheap path to the Super Bowl. Tua led the league in passing yards. The Bills were the preseason favorites to win the Super Bowl. The Ravens were the favorite to win the AFC coming into the playoffs. And the Niners were the betting market's best team in football. They run the table and they win out. And you're like, what chance does the rest of this team have if that version of this team can win the Super Bowl?
And of all people, who catches a winning touchdown? McCole Hardman, who, if you talk to the Jets, I'm sure that's a whole different thing, right? Wow. And then admits, I don't know if he admits to the world or if it was Patrick Mahomes, he didn't know the rules, didn't even know that. Can you imagine that? Oh, it was good. I got a touchdown in the Super Bowl, but I didn't win the Super Bowl?
Well, and that was the Kyle Juszczyk didn't even know that the new playoff rules were applied. And this was all, you and I were on Radio Row, and Sam, Ben, and Tage did a great job filling in for us last week. When you and I were on Radio Row last week, the one thing that we said was Kyle Shanahan's an A-plus coach, A-plus play designer. There's just so many good things he does. And I thought you saw a lot of that on display yesterday with, the Juwan Jennings touchdown pass and the way in which they got McCaffrey in space at times and some of the answers that they had on some of the really, really good play calls defensively that Steve Spagnuolo had. And he even went for a fourth down Thomas, in the situation that everybody ripped Dan Campbell for going for the previous week, right? They were down by 3 in the other team's area. The Chiefs had all the momentum in the game, right? They went from 10-3 to 13-10, and they went for 4th and 3. Kittle barely gets it. No one's going to talk about that call because they made it.
Yeah.
And so he even bucks his own trend, which is to be conservative on 4th downs. I'm thinking to myself, I didn't think Andy called the best game. I thought that the Chiefs are kind of behind the 8 ball on offense most of the time. And Kyle was doing some things he normally doesn't do in a good way. And then yet at the end, they take the ball to start overtime, which, it's about a 50-50 proposition. I know one of my friends, Brian Burke, thinks it's, about a coin flip. I think in a situation like that, you have to understand that what has stopped the Chiefs offense this entire year has been the Chiefs offense. And so I don't really care if your defense is tired. I don't really care about really anything other than give the ball to the Chiefs, give them that sense of relief that has been the enemy all year. When you kicked a field goal and told them exactly what they needed to win the Super Bowl, to me, it felt like you bailed out a team that has been living on the edge all year by giving them one objective, right? And we manage people at work all the time. Like, it's about motivating people. And I feel like this Chiefs team was this super talented employee that you had to give, like, hey, if you meet this one objective, you're going to get a bonus this year. And if you kicked off to them to start overtime, they're kind of like, well, we could go down and kick a field goal. We can go, score a touchdown. In any event, the game's not over. So I feel like Andy might relax a little bit too much. But going down yourself and kicking a field goal and being like, okay, Kansas City, if you put together one more drive, this thing's over, to me felt like the one thing that you couldn't do.
So what next? I mean, let's talk about the free agent. I mean, okay, so they win. It's a really cool game as far as, an energetic game. We're watching it all. Then my head goes to, okay, where are they free agency wise, both teams? What's the construction? Oh, by the way, can I just say this? I'm watching the stage, and I always watch the stage at the end of those big games. I saw John Elway walk up there. How uncomfortable is that? I don't like that when they walk through the crowd and the players are kind of, I think they're busting on those guys. Guys like that with egos are walking through there going, get away from me. I was the dude here. I'm walking through with the trophy. Gets up on the stage, blah, blah, blah. They hand over the trophy. I watch Brett Veach the whole time, right? And I'm thinking, Brett Veach, are you kidding me? I didn't hear it from Andy Reid, and I like Andy a lot. I didn't hear from Clark Hunt. I didn't hear from Patrick Mahomes. They did not laud Brett Veach. That hurts my heart as a former GM. Nothing? Well,
yeah, and I thought, Steve Spagnuolo coached a Hall of Fame game, but for the most part, they had eight starting eight contributors on that defense that were drafted in the last 3 years. 6 of them were drafted the year that they traded Tyreek Hill. That was Brett Veach putting his balls on the table and being like, if that fails, you're a 1 Super Bowl GM. You might be like, what if the Chiefs failed the last 2 years? You're starting to think of hot seat for this guy. You traded a guy that led the NFL in receiving yards for the last 2 years, or one of the leaders, one of the best receivers in all of football. You trade him to Miami. He turns Tua into a Pro Bowl quarterback, and then you don't win. Like, he took a huge gamble, and now they've won 2 Super Bowls just with a defense that he's largely built from scratch. And to your point, they don't give him a ton of credit. And I know that it's kind of Andy's team, and Andy's a very good teacher and all this stuff, but you got to pick the players, and he picks the players, and they're phenomenal at it.
Oh, yeah. I care that it's Andy's team. I get that. But Andy said to me in a discussion with him, we were at the Royals game, and I was visiting with Brett in that group, Steve Spagnuolo, about a year and a half ago. And he was lauding Brett, so happy for him. He's so good at what he does. I'm just saying, on a big stage like that, it makes me wonder, did Brett say to him, hey, do not mention me. Don't put me on the spot up there. Of course, they're not going to give him the microphone. They would have given John Lynch the microphone because John Lynch is John Lynch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all I'm saying in defense of general managers, like, he's put his butt on the line there for sure. And I hope that he gets his due in the media outside of that moment.
Well, and one of my friends, Dave Solfaros, is just here to say Patrick Mahomes is special. Can we speak on the ability to find ways to win football games? I think that that's a big deal too, which is knowing as a team builder, right? You knew how you could stretch Matt Ryan and maybe how far you could stretch him where it's too much. This year, the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes was pressured more per dropback than he ever has in his career, 35.8%. He scrambled more, 64 times, than he ever has in his career. He had the lowest average depth of target, 6.9 yards, meaning his passes were shorter. And yet at the same time, like, they're winning. Like, they went and said, Brett Veach went and said, look, we have this superstar quarterback who can win in a lot of different circumstances, right? We can push and pull, and the roster really needs me to put some TLC on the defense. And so I'm going to take away, the Chiefs only had 2 players with over 500 yards receiving all year. And the offensive line, 2 new tackles, neither one played well all year. The offensive line led the league in penalties. And yet they were able to build a defense that was really the reason they won the Super Bowl. And a lot of that has to do with looking at your roster, Thomas, right? And being like, this is the guy that I can expect more out of. I can put every dollar I add to this player is not diminishing returns, is accelerated returns. And then I take the additional money and I put it on defense, and ultimately it's the winning formula. There's an aspect of that too. And again, I think it's really lazy, to your point, that everybody just says, oh, it's Andy and Patrick. When no other team in NFL history has won a Super Bowl with a quarterback making as much as, Mahomes has the highest cap hit in the league. This is the first time in NFL history that a quarterback who has the biggest cap hit in all of football has won the Super Bowl. And I think that a lot of that credit goes to the team builders on the Chiefs.
Okay. Remember, I said it a couple years ago, or how many years ago was it when Tampa won? I have always been categorical about the fact that whoever wins the Super Bowl as a GM is the best GM in the world. I know that sounds superfluous and such, but I believe it. For now, this guy, back-to-back, right? Brett Veach should be considered the best general manager out there in the world. And I know their sports are going to argue with me, but of course I could say football. But it's pretty damn.
And he held the line on. So think about this too. They trade for Orlando Brown when they really need a tackle. His agent was a huge privilege and wanted a ton more money. He held the line on Orlando Brown. He wins the Super Bowl. Orlando goes to Cincinnati. They find a way to replace him. Chris Jones holds out. Chris Jones is one of the better defensive players in all of football.
Yep.
Brett Veach holds the line. He sits out a week. They give him kind of an adjusted deal, give him all the incentives. He didn't cave too. It's not as easy as I think a lot of people want to dismiss what he has done because of how good the quarterback is and how good the coach is, but I think that that's lazy. On the other side of the aisle, the Niners, so the Chiefs have two free agents that are big, Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed. Jones, of course, last year had the saga about it being his contract year. He held out all the training camp. He held out the first game of the season. Sneed has gone from a very good player to what many consider to be a great player. I think he's going to be a franchise tag candidate for the Chiefs coming up in the spring. I don't know what's going to happen with Chris Jones, given his age and given the fact that he'll have a substantial market in free agency should he get there. The Chiefs have about a little over $20 million in salary cap space, so they have the space to do it. They also have a $35 million roster bonus on Mahomes, which they can convert and make into a $28 million more of cap space. So they have the room to do what they want. They just haven't been overly desperate to overpay for players. And so you get back to the whole, you pay your stars, but then you depend upon Brett Veach to find players who are not as expensive to come in and backfill. L'Jarius Sneed, a former fourth-round pick out of Louisiana Tech. What if he goes from making small dollars to $20 million a year, let's say on the franchise tag? That's going to make Brett Veach's job a lot harder. But again, as you said, right now he's probably the best GM in all of football, so he'll have to make that work.
Not probably, he is. Come on, Eric.
Okay, yeah, I'm willing to. Look, no one else has won 2 straight Super Bowls since all the way back to your days as a New England Patriots director of college scouting.
So I'm jumping around. I get it, but look, in my mind, I'm thinking, but I do not want to see a whole other year of back-to-back commercials. It's going to drive me bonkers. Please.
Is Kelce going to play anymore? I feel like Kelce is – so Kelce went through the injuries and stuff. I know he said he wants to play another year, but –
He said, yeah. But I guess my point on it is I told you the other day, and Ted Cruz, not the political Ted Cruz. You guys all saw Ted Cruz.
Literally everybody texted me after the show saying, that Ted – no, it's Ted Cruz, Crews, Cruz, not –
That's
not
right.
The, not
Ted
the,
Cruz,
the senator.
if you guys remember, you saw that guy that came up to this. The Ted Cruz we're talking about was bigger, stout, African-American guy, great presence, looked good. He was all polished up, and he was giving Andy a hug after the game, walking with him, protecting him, telling everyone, no, he's going to talk on the podium. I texted Ted, man, I'm so happy for him, man. But I want to tell him, get your guys away from that this year. Let them have a little bit of a break so they're not wearing red. What's the damn insurance company? I can't.
Oh, yeah, State Farm.
State Farm. Of course I know what it is.
Yeah, they gave Patrick a little bit of a raise this year, and I feel like he can afford to miss a couple of State Farm commercials. But that is Yeah, it's going to be nuts. I think that, the one true proverb about the NFL is you generally speaking don't win your Super Bowls. And I think this year, the Niners and the Ravens probably thought that this was their Super Bowl. And unfortunately, the Chiefs took it down. I think next year it remains to be seen who will be the favorite, but it'll be probably a different team that comes and takes it down. Will that team be the 49ers? Is a good question. San Francisco, I think the best team in football. The betting markets for most of the year had them as the best team. There was a brief time when the look-ahead line for the Super Bowl had the Ravens favored against them. But for the most part, the Niners were the best team in football for most of the season.
I got a question. I'm jumping in. If you're the owner of the San Francisco 49ers, right, you win a lot of games, and they laud head coach, they laud general manager, they give new contracts. I'm going to ask you a tough question when you get all that money in your pocket. How long do you go before you get dismayed and disheartened with not finishing with a Super Bowl?
I think that you could start the conversation today. I don't think it's fair, but this isn't a fair business. Like, we talked about Justin Fields when we did NBC Chicago, right? Where I said they haven't given Justin Fields the best environment. It's not the most fair thing in the world, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't make the right decision and draft Caleb Williams or Drake May. Like, things are the way they are. Would it be 100% fair to move on from Shanahan? No. But was it fair to move on from Tony Dungy in Tampa Bay? Probably not. Tony's a great coach, Hall of Fame guy. But at some point, you do need a different voice every once in a while. And that's where you worry. Was it fair for the Patriots to move on from Belichick? Probably not. But they probably felt that they needed a new voice after 20 years. Now, do I think that they should do it? I think that they should at least consider some changes there. Namely, I think he needs a guy that'll help him in game as far as, more robustly handling the clock. Like, at the end of the first half, the Chiefs, you could tell, Ray Charles could see this. All the Chiefs wanted to do was end the half with the ball with no time left. They were willing to not even score a touchdown as long as they got a field goal and the Niners didn't have another possession. And yet Shanahan sat on his timeouts the whole time. I'm thinking to myself, buddy, the Chiefs have given up more than one touchdown in the second half of a game, no times since December 3rd. If you're not going to get to them now, when are you going to get to them? And that obviously played out. I think Kyle is so good at so many parts of the game, and yet there's so many little parts where it's you've been in this league for so long, you're so good, and yet there's this part. And so if I'm the owner of the Niners, I'm thinking to myself, what do we get over the hump? The last time they won the Super Bowl, it was the San Diego Chargers with George Seifert. It's been a long time, and that fan base is loyal.
So two things. One, I can't believe you said Ray Charles and used that analogy. That's like Lutheran all the way, Midwest, clean-cut humor. I can't believe you did it, but I believe it because you're such a clean-cut Midwestern Lutheran. Well, at least the people that don't hear you swear, of course, which is okay. Mom and Dad, please forgive your son for swearing every once in a while, but he doesn't do it.
They watched the game with me last night at my house, so they know that they've heard me before.
But look, the reason I asked that is because Jed York, he's a hell of an owner. They put together a really impressive group there. Like you said, great talent. They have John Lynch in there, of course, Kyle, who I've said, and I said it all throughout Super Bowl week. He would be a guy that I would definitely knock on the door to trade for if I were to ever come back, because I believe it's such an important position to acquire. People could argue with it. What I'm saying ultimately, though, is remember, owners will say, yes, we need a Super Bowl. I wish that you had the stat on this, but it's an unbelievable stat for everyone who doesn't know. Maybe everyone does know. You're not making a ton of money, and it's fairly negligible when you win a Super Bowl, right? It's
from a bonus standpoint for a coach. Yeah.
No, I'm saying as a
franchise.
Team, franchises aren't all of a sudden going up $2 billion. Right. But what they are doing when they have a consistent football team, and I'll only push back on you a little bit, and the reason I asked you not to put you on the line that way, but it was more, if I'm an owner, I'm saying, man, they are winning all kinds of games, They are a great product. They have fantastic talent. They're exciting to watch. And so you ride that until you can't ride it anymore, of course. And we all know that in football. So just because everyone's throwing darts at Kyle now because he can't win the big one, and the dialogue out there is he lost 3 Super Bowls. This isn't, I'm saying the dialogue, I hear it is in 16 and the last 2 Super Bowls that there was quotes of superior talent, and why are they not winning when it really comes to it? I don't know I think that's exaggerative as well.
Well, look, they've lost, and they've lost double-digit leads in all the 3 Super Bowls we've lost. I mean, I think that's something where people are looking at that. And again, I agree with you. Like, look, like we live in Atlanta. The Braves were in the playoffs every year for 20 straight years. And there's value to that. There's value to the gate. And to your point about, you know this better than me, but like almost all the revenue in the NFL is shared, except for, like merch revenue inside of a stadium. And so like you win a Super Bowl, that selling that stuff is obviously, but that's a pittance compared to like everything else associated with the league. So from a dollars and cents standpoint, it makes sense to keep them around because A, they're very good, and B, you're in it all the time. I think that the hard part is like, and you get this a little bit, like the hard part is that the Super Bowl is just such a pinnacle, but to your point about the business sense of it, it's almost secondary to everything. It's almost secondary to being there. And I think that the hard part about the Chiefs just show this. The hard part about winning a Super Bowl is kind of not what the part the Niners have nailed, which is the part the Niners have nailed is being the best team in the league. The hard part about winning a Super Bowl is consistently being one of the best teams in the league, which is a lot harder.
Yep. No, you hit the nail on the head. I think moving forward, and so you are picking the 49ers for next year. Is that your pick already?
Well, the Niners are the betting favorite. If you go, actually, let me show everybody our new website at SumerSports. We actually, because we aim to serve, although it's not. If you go to our league page at SumerSports.com, we already have 2024 simulations and predictions up. We did that this morning. The Niners are the favorite to win the Super Bowl next year, and I think they should be. They're the most talented team. The one question that you have to have, and this is where, from your team building standpoint, I think that you can add a lot of insight. They have 5 players with cap hits over $20 million next year, and those are Deebo Samuel, Trent Williams, Kittle's one of them. Ayuk's on a 5th-year option. They don't have him long term. He might be their best wide receiver. You have a lot of situations where they're $3 million over the cap, which is not hard to get under the cap, but you have no premium young players on your team in the sense that the last 3 years you have no first-round picks that are still on your roster. Trey Lance was the first rounder in 2021. He's gone. You didn't have one the last 2 years. And so you're at this position where all your good players are older veteran contract players, except for your quarterback, who's going to want money after next year. You're over the cap, which means you don't have a ton of money to supplement your weaknesses. You don't have many weaknesses, to be fair.
Yep.
But to be operational, you're probably going to have to prorate money on Trent Williams' deal. You're probably going to have to prorate money on George Kittle's deal. And in the moment, that doesn't seem that bad. But Trent Williams is getting older. George Kittle's getting older. George Kittle missed time last night with injury. Deebo Samuel, similarly. When you're looking at that, do you just buckle up and say, one more year, let's run it back, let's try? We know that that's consistently missed, even with a lot of the great teams. Or do you kind of like take a breather year, knowing, much like Kansas City has taken breather years, as long as the coach and the quarterback and some of the really key players are on that team, it might not be the prettiest thing in the world, but you can still win a Super Bowl, even if you take a step back as a team.
Look, I'm a big believer in pillar positions. I'm a big believer in there's 5, 6, or 7 that you have to have. And around that, you might trim off some of the other areas. And you have to be comfortable understanding. And Bill Belichick used to talk about this all the time, and Scott Pioli. You have to be comfortable knowing that when you move on from some of these players, they may go and play 1 or 2 more years and be outstanding. You don't like it, but it can happen. You have to accept that, and you have to set the expectations. Most important, you have to make sure that your owner understands that can happen as well, so that you're not just flippantly accused of not knowing what you're doing and getting rid of good players, and your fan base as well, which, of course, that's another thing to talk about. So I'm a big believer you have to step back. You can't carry all of the same players. I mean, look, I think about some of the years that we had where we moved on from players, and if you're doing a hell of a job coaching and you're preparing and you're doing a good job, of course, a very good job, of course, game planning, I think you can win. You saw it in New England off of a number of those years. They weren't always the elite talent.
Yep.
They did a great job, and I think Bill, it's why I believe he's the best out there, because he is just a mastermind when it comes to utilizing the talent, and they can be good football players. They don't have to be the 9s. They can be 6.5s or 7s, and you can win Super Bowls.
Well, and a couple Patriots examples for everybody. So a couple Patriot anecdotes, right? Like, you guys cut Lawyer Malloy. He goes to Buffalo. You guys lose to Buffalo 31-0 on opening day. Everybody's talking about Belichick and all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, not only do you do well that year, you beat Buffalo 31-0 in week 17 and then win the Super Bowl. And so, like, fans worry about letting a guy go, and hit, like, Bears fans are so worried about Justin Fields going to Atlanta and being great. And it's like, well, that doesn't matter, right? He wasn't going to be great for you. And so what does it matter? You probably want him to be good somewhere else, but like fans and maybe within teams, they worry about this. But then the other anecdote, which is really good, is the whole point about you don't win your own Super Bowls, right? You remember this because it was painful for you. The 2007 Patriots, that was their Super Bowl, and they didn't win it. The 2010, that was their Super Bowl, and they didn't win it. The 2003, that was the Colts Super Bowl, and you guys took it from them. 2001 was the Rams Super Bowl, and they took it from them. 2014 was the Seahawks Super Bowl, took it from them. And in 2018, the last time they won, this felt very Chiefsian, right? Where you're pitter-pattering through the whole year. You're not that impressive all year. And then they and that was the Chiefs' year to win. And they went into Arrowhead and they stole their Super Bowl. And I think because of how pressure works and how random football is, it almost always works that way, where the team that's kind of in the lead position all year just runs out of gas. And so if you're the 49ers, you think, okay, you take a step back. I don't know who they let go. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, do they let go of Trent Williams? Probably not. Do they let go of Kittle? I don't know. But if you take a step back, much like the Chiefs did when they get rid of Tyreek Hill, you reset expectations. And then now everybody's chasing after Buffalo. Everybody's chasing after San Francisco. And then you're kind of like sneaking up on people again. If you're San Fran and you take a step back, then now everybody's looking after Dallas or Detroit or Green Bay or somebody like that. And maybe you're able to sort of sneak in there and make some hay where you don't have all that pressure and you're not worn out by the time you get to week 22 the same way you were when you were the favorite the whole time. That's kind of my thinking. And it also helps you set up for the future, obviously, because it helps you set up for the future because you're not sort of levered up on one particular year, which usually ends up in a letdown.
Well, setting up for the future, perfect segue into what you want to introduce here.
Thomas, normally I'm the one with the segues, but yes, we are actually going to a meeting and momentarily we're actually late to it. So we're going to run off here in a little bit, but we are going to, we have found a partner for this show. We'll announce it in the very short term future, but this show will be airing on a radio station in the future. We are very excited about that. We secured that on Radio Row this past week, so we were not gone in vain. If you like Tej, Ben, and Sam, who wouldn't? Great. If you didn't, it was for a good cause because Thomas and I were out at Radio Row securing this. We are still going to put the show on all this on our YouTube and iTunes and everything like that, but we will have a pretty special partner here in the coming months for draft season and then also for the offseason. So stay tuned for that. We're really excited about it. Thomas, you killed it on Radio Row. The whole time I was back. Everybody's like, where did you guys go? I'm like, well, we kind of moneyballed Radio Row. We got there on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday before Emmitt Smith was running around selling tequila, before everybody else was there. We got our hits in. We told our story, kicked ass, and then we left before all the traffic. I think we really nailed Radio Row, but specifically I think you did. Everybody that messaged me was so impressed, not only with all of your, but also now you talk a very good analytics game, Thomas. So it was an incredible time.
So thank you. I mean, he's being humble, and here we are back and forth patting each other. But I've never seen anyone get more interest, and they're like, "Screw Thomas, let's just get Eric Eager on here," which I think was great. And let's do this. Matt Stopsky, give him his full on, like, laud the heck out of him, our producer.
Yeah, Matt does a great job, and he will be producing our show in the future. He does. He's helped us book for both the last 2 Super Bowls. He's also produced our draft show, which we will also be doing in the spring for the April draft. And he will be booking us Radio Row at the Combine in 2 weeks, which will be awesome. A little bit smaller scale at the Combine, but still fun. Still good to see everybody. So he's been phenomenal, and absolutely recommend him. There's nothing, the football and the world of football is all about people and people you can trust. And Matt, there's no one I think we trust more than him. So that's incredible. Thomas, do you have any parting words? Do you have any? I know. Look, you don't have to listen to Taylor Swift music now. We don't have to watch the games. We don't have to. Mahomes' wife hugging her. I like Kelsey's wife, the other Kelsey, Jason. With wearing the Cincinnati shirt instead of the Chiefs shirt. She held to her guns. She seems like a real one. But that spectacle, we're not gonna have it for 7 months. So we're in for the long haul here. We're gonna have to start talking about draft prospects starting this week.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, I can't wait to jump in the draft. We got to switch our mode here. Talk a little bit about free agency as well as the draft, and jump on board. So excited about our next venture that's going to tie in very well. And there's a lot going on in Sumer, right? A lot going on in the next few weeks. We'll continue to talk about that as well.
Perfect. Well, for Thomas Dimitroff, this has been Eric Eager. This has been the post-Super Bowl SumerSports Show.